What's up, awesome YouTubers? Ryan1988 or Justin back here to do a video for you guys, and today I'm here to talk about my top 10 horror movies that need 4K releases. Now, I went with horror movies because I feel like as a genre, being released on 4K, it's very little. Obviously, we're getting them. You know, Psycho's coming out on Tuesday from Universal. I am so excited to watch that transfer and review it for you guys. Looking forward to that. We've had Jaws come out from Universal. We've had The Shining last year from Warner Brothers. Lionsgate is really good at releasing horror movies on 4K. Evil Dead 2, American Psycho, the original Halloween. But there are plenty of other horror movies out there that I feel like need that 4K release, and I always feel like horror movies are overlooked as far as 4K releases go. It's just not really as well known for horror movies to get 4K releases or proper 4K releases. So I picked 10 movies. Obviously, there's a lot more out there. The last 4 movies are actually from one company, and they're releasing a lot of 4K movies from their catalog titles already. So you'll probably know a pattern once you see like the last 4 movies I'm going to be talking about, what company that is. But again, horror movies I really wish would get more 4K releases. And again, they're kind of just overlooked as far as 4K releases go. And if these top 10 movies that I pick get 4K releases, I would want them obviously to be done right. True 4K would be amazing. I know we've had like 4K scans, and I think if I'm saying the word right, again, I'm not tech savvy, so like restoration, I think 4K scan is the word. I know we've had 4K scans of these movies, but true 4K would be amazing. And let's get started, guys, because I don't want to keep rambling. Let me know what your guys' horror movies that you would love to have released on 4K would be. I do want to say before I get started with this, my last video, I apologize for delete or taking off the comment section. I had a lot of spam and it was getting on my nerves. I had like 7 spam comments, and so I just finally decided to disable the comment section. So I'll leave it open for a little bit, but if I keep getting the spam, I probably will close comments altogether. But until then, we'll see how it goes. But until then, please let me know what movies you would like, what horror movies you would like to be released on 4K. So let's get started, guys. So number 10, I actually put it at number 10 because I always feel like this is a movie that either people want on 4K or don't. The reason why I say that is because the movie has grain in the film that just looks, it fits the movie. I mean, it gives you that atmosphere that you want. And this, I believe, 4K scan of the movie, looks great. I have no problems with it. In fact, actually, when I put it on my TV, my 4K TV, it actually gives you an upscale, and the upscale is beautiful. But if they did a true 4K transfer of this movie, I think it would be beautiful if they leave that grain in there, but also clean it up to where you get that perfect balance. And that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Again, it ranks number 10 because I think some people either want this on 4K or don't. But if a studio were to do this right, if they were to keep that grain, that it just fits the movie perfectly, but also cleaned it up nicely as well, have that balance, I think it would be a beautiful release. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I love that movie. Again, there are great releases of that movie out there. I believe this is a 4K scan, could be wrong, but that release, as well as a lot of the other steelbooks that we've gotten, and the last Dark Sky 2-disc edition that we had, That scan is beautiful, but if done right, if done right, keeping that balance of that natural grain and a nice clean restoration or transfer of the movie, it would look perfect. So for me, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, number 10. So number 9 is a sequel to one of my favorite horror movie of all time. It is my favorite horror movie of all time. And I always love watching this sequel after it, just because it fits, this whole big story arc well. It's one big movie if you think about it, especially when you watch the sequel after the original movie. And I know Shout Factory / Scream Factory has this movie already. They've released it in a box set, they've released it in Steelbook, in standard release Blu-ray. But if a true 4K release of this movie would come out, it would be so nice. And that is Halloween 2. Now, I pulled out my Steelbook just because it's a beautiful Steelbook, first of all. I love it. But also, this was actually a 4K scan, which means they actually cleaned it up even more compared to the release in the box set and their first release from Shout Factory / Scream Factory in 2012. But if Shout Factory / Scream Factory were to release a true 4K, or say if it went out of print and Universal got the rights back completely, if they were to even release a 4K, a true 4K, I really think this movie would look great. You have a lot of those dark, atmosphere, the dark tones in the movie, the dark nighttime scenes that I think would look really good if they did it right. All those scenes would look great. But also you got a lot of orange, you have color in the movie that if done right, if brightened right, if there was a true 4K of it, it would look so beautiful. Those colors would pop, the nighttime scenes would look beautiful. Halloween 2, I feel Halloween 2, if, I don't need all the movies on 4K, I have that beautiful box set already. But Halloween 2 for me is one of the best, if not the best sequel ever made. Just out of horror movies in general, the best sequel ever made, or one of the best. And I love Halloween 2. I think it deserves that 4K release, if they do it right. Again, this is a 4K scan, I believe, and it looks great already. But I would love a true 4K release of this. So. We're going to continue on. We're going to go through these pretty quick. I'm already going on 7 minutes, and I don't want it to be a long video. So number 8, Crimson Peak. The reason why I picked Crimson Peak, because A, it's one of the best modern horror movies in my opinion. I love haunted house movies. I think this is one of the best ones within the last 10 years. Definitely one of the best from the last decade. But Crimson Peak, colors in this movie, they would really pop out if it was a true 4K release. 4K restoration, I believe is the right word. I think, beautifully done if they released it on true 4K. Colors would be bright, the blacks would be perfect. I mean, just like this movie has a mixture of both black and color, and if done right, would be beautiful. And snow as well. There's a lot of there's scenes where there's snow. Can you just imagine if that snow was cleaned up, or that the white texture, or the snow just in general, if cleaned up perfectly, would look amazing on 4K. So Crimson Peak for me, I absolutely love it. So hopefully, Universal releases that on 4K. Number 7 is Carrie. So I picked Carrie because one, this release from Shout Factory / Scream Factory is going out of print, and so I feel like this is now the time for a company to release it on 4K. Now, if it released on true 4K, it would look amazing because, again, color for me, I think color for me, especially like the reds and the blues at the prom scene, would really pop out. There's a lot of color there. And I love the way Brian De Palma shot the prom scene, especially when everything starts happening. I think that would look amazing on true 4K. Great release from Scream Factory here, but a proper 4K transfer of this movie would look amazing. So Carrie, absolutely love that movie, one of my favorites, and I think would would look amazing on true 4K. So going into number 6, then we're going into my top 5. So number 6 is a film, the reason why I rank it at number 6, and it's not lower, it's in the middle, somewhat in the middle. The reason why I ranked it here is because I feel like maybe Shout Factory or Scream Factory are in the works of releasing it. People are talking about it. So maybe they're going to release it someday in the future. They did the Halloween box set. They're doing the Friday the 13th box set. They might release this on a re-release box set. But the very first movie, if I think Warner Brothers now owns it, if they were to release at least the first one on 4K, I think it would look amazing. I think the Blu-ray that they released almost 10 years ago, if not 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, slash New Line Cinema, of course, I think that Blu-ray looked great already. There was a lot of things that you saw for the first time. So it's a beautiful Blu-ray in itself. I actually don't think a lot of people talk about it as much. I think it is a great Blu-ray. But true 4K, if they release it, I think Nightmare on Elm Street would be beautiful. The reason why I say that the Blu-ray already looks great is because I remember watching the Blu-ray for the first time on back in 2009, I had a very small TV. But even on that TV, the Blu-ray looked great. I could tell there was detail that I had never seen before that just really stood out. You saw Freddy's face a little bit more. It's like they cleaned it up even better so you could see Freddy's face, especially in those alley scenes. And he was creepy. I mean, really creepy to see a much more detailed look at Freddy's face. Because I had I watched it on VHS. I had the DVD, and I just remember, thinking Freddy was creepy then, but then putting on the Blu-ray for the first time, that gave me chills because it was like I was watching the movie for the first time and seeing Freddy for the first time. So if a true 4K transfer of this movie were to come out, say if we don't get a box set, say if Warner Brothers / New Line were to release just the first movie on 4K, it would look fantastic. I think it would, if done right. If there was a true 4K release of this movie, true 4K transfer, it would look beautiful. So Nightmare on Elm Street, wanted to throw it in there. Again, I would have ranked it even higher, but I have a feeling if we don't get a 4K release, we are going to get a re-release box set in the future with all the movies. Now going into my top 5. The last 4 I talk about actually come from the same company, and they're releasing a lot of movies on 4K, so re-releasing a lot of movies on 4K. So the last 4 movies, I think, would just benefit the 4K format. But my number 5 comes from Paramount, and I know Paramount right now, they're releasing Paramount Presents titles, which are really cool. I like those. A lot of them are getting, if I'm saying it correct, they're getting 4K restorations. They're not true 4Ks, but they are getting those either 4K upscale or 4K scans or 4K restorations. They're not 4Ks, they're just Blu-rays. This already has a Blu-ray. I know they've been known to re-release movies on Blu-ray with this catalog, but I would love this horror movie to get a true 4K release. I think the day shots, the rainy setting that takes place in a lot of this movie, in fact, a lot of this is rainy settings, but a lot of the day shots I think would look amazing. We had The Goonies come out last week, and that movie, or this past week, and that movie just proved that a lot of those rain shots, a lot of those gloomy outside weather scenery scenes looked beautiful. And I think a movie like this would do the same thing. That is The Ring. Now, I love this release from The Ring. This is the Best Buy exclusive from almost 10 years ago. If that says anything, we haven't had a release of this movie in almost 10 years. But a true 4K of this movie would look beautiful. This is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I almost feel like, I know this movie is a film that people do love, but over time, I feel like people don't talk about it enough. But The Ring, a true 4K of this movie would look beautiful. Again, Paramount's doing a lot of the Paramount Presents titles, which are awesome, but those obviously aren't 4K releases. So a movie like this would look so good on true 4K if done right. A lot of, again, the outside scenes, beautiful. You have a lot of those moments where, it takes place at nighttime, and those scenes would look beautiful if done right. So The Ring, absolutely would love to see it on true 4K. Paramount's known for doing it. Top Gun, they did that. They did, I believe, War of the Worlds. Days of Thunder, they released on Paramount Presents and 4K, so separate releases. So, it's about time we got some horror movies on 4K. This is one of them, or more horror movies on 4K. This would be one of them, and Paramount, I hope they do it. So maybe the 20th anniversary release of the film. So going into my top 4, again, these 4 movies, some are classics, some are modern horror movies. In fact, I think only the one I'm going to talk about is the only modern one. But it has a whole kind of universe. I feel like the first movie, if anything, deserves that 4K release. And it's going on 8 or 7 years now since since it was released in theaters. I believe either 2012 or 2013 this movie came out. And so maybe on the 10th anniversary of its release date, or its original release date, or when the third movie, kind of within this trilogy, when that comes out next year, maybe we'll get a 4K release of the first movie and maybe even the second movie. I just went with the first movie. You know what I'm talking about probably. That is The Conjuring. I love The Conjuring. Absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorite haunted house movies, maybe top 5. But The Conjuring, if any of them, would be the one that I would want on 4K. So, fact about this kind of Conjuring universe, is it Warner Brothers? Yes, Warner Brothers released The Nun on 4K. That was the only one in this universe that they released on 4K. Yes, The Nun's not well liked by a lot of people, especially even fans of the universe, but that one does have a 4K, and I hear it actually looks and sounds really good on 4K. So The Conjuring, for me, maybe next year when we get the third movie, maybe we'll get 1 and 2 on 4K. Again, like Nightmare on Elm Street, I don't need them all on 4K, but for me, The Conjuring, especially the first Conjuring, I would love to have a 4K release, a true 4K release. Again, you have a lot of nighttime shots, you have daytime shots that would really benefit, if done right, on 4K. And love The Conjuring. Just had to throw that one in there. I love this movie. I'm going to be watching it soon for, kind of the fall, October feel. And that's Halloween season is upon us. So The Conjuring, though, we're not going to get it this year. But maybe next year, maybe on its 10th anniversary, we'll get that 4K. I hope so. It deserves it. So my last 3 are all Warner Brother titles, 70s films, 80s films. These are movies that I'm like, Goonies is being released, Beetlejuice is being released, The Shining got released. I'm like, these 3 movies, these top 3 films absolutely deserve that 4K, true 4K transfer and release. My number 3 is The Lost Boys. So The Lost Boys, it's a popular movie. People know about it. I'm surprised that Warner Brothers hasn't released this on 4K yet. I would love a true 4K release of The Lost Boys. This Blu-ray looks great, but this Blu-ray is 12 years old. This was the last time I believe that this movie was released on Blu-ray by itself. So The Lost Boys, for me, would be one that I absolutely would love to get that true 4K release, that 4K transfer. Again, if done right, you have a lot of day shots, you have a lot of night shots. The colors would be beautiful. Even, I don't really talk about it, I haven't talked about it too much, but the sound, if done right, if they used a right track, I believe that's the word, Lost Boys would really benefit with a 4K release. Again, this Blu-ray came out 12 years ago. It's about time this movie gets another release and a retrospective documentary. That would be cool. A new documentary on the Lost Boys. As much as people love the Lost Boys, it's also underrated because we haven't had a release of this movie in a very long time. And I think it's about time that the Lost Boys got a re-release. Maybe Scream Factory would do it, but a re-release on 4K would be even better. Love the Lost Boys, one of my favorites. Absolutely love it. Number 2 is a horror movie that, the sequels got Scream Factory releases, which is great. But I feel like Poltergeist deserves a true 4K restoration. It's almost time that we got a new release of this movie. In 2 years, it's going to hit, I believe, 40 years since its original release. I believe this movie's 38 years now. 38 years old now. But once it hits that 40 mark, I think it's about time this movie got a 4K release. I love Poltergeist. I love this release, but I noticed this is one of those rare movies where I actually really have to turn up my sound quite a bit to hear the movie. So on my TV that I have, the TV that I have is a true 4K TV, obviously. It's a 55-inch 4K TV. The picture quality looks great, no problems with the picture quality, but as far as sound goes, I really have to turn up my TV to hear it. So I think a true 4K release of Poltergeist would be amazing. Sound, picture quality, all of it. There's a lot of, brights in this movie that I think would really benefit from a true 4K release, 4K transfer. But Poltergeist for me, I feel like even though this movie is loved by a lot of people, there's not a lot of great releases of this movie. Obviously this release is great. I love the digibook, and again, the transfer is great and the sound is great, but you have to turn it up quite a bit, or at least I have to turn it up quite a bit to fully hear everything going on. Yes, I've seen this movie so many times, so I know pretty much word for word with a lot of it. I know the scenes that are going to happen. But when I have to turn up the volume quite a bit, that means it's time for a 4K release of this, or a re-release. I want a 4K of Poltergeist. It deserves it. It's a classic film. I absolutely love it. Now, my number 1, you guys probably know what it is. It's a Warner Brothers title. It's going to be hitting, I believe, 50 years. 50 years in 2023. I believe 50 years. Hopefully that's correct. But 50 years. 2023 will be 50 years. And this movie right here, absolutely love it. It is loved by a lot of horror movie fans, just a lot of movie fans in general. That's The Exorcist, guys. So my number 1 would be The Exorcist. The reason why it's my number 1 is I'm surprised that we haven't had Warner Brothers release this on true 4K yet. I think this movie would benefit it so much. You have a lot of, again, day shots, night shots. If done correct, those would look beautiful. Beetlejuice, which was just released, I was amazed, especially by that one, at how good that movie looked. The night shots looked great, the dark colors were perfect. The day shots, the colors throughout the day shots were beautiful. I mean, colors really stood out. There was that natural look to it that just really amazed me with Beetlejuice. So for me, The Exorcist, if done right, perfect release of this movie. I mean, that would be a perfect release of the movie. I love this steelbook. I love it on Blu-ray. I think the Blu-ray is the best the movie's ever looked. I know some people love grain in a movie. So for me, if they kept that natural grain, but also balanced it with a new transfer, a 4K transfer. If they balanced it perfectly, I think The Exorcist would be amazing on 4K. So anyway, guys, The Exorcist, my number one. Again, I want to know what you guys think. You know, do you agree with these movies that I have? What are some other horror movies that should get 4K releases? Again, this is a genre I feel, even though we are getting those 4K releases, it is a genre that is overlooked quite a bit as far as older movies getting 4K releases. We're getting other genres on 4K, but horror movies, even though we're getting them, it's kind of sporadic, and I think, at least for me, it kind of surprises me, and I get excited when they announce like something like The Shining or Psycho or Jaws, Halloween. When those get those announcements that they're getting 4K releases, I get excited because it's amazing when a company is like, hey, we're going to release a horror movie on 4K. It's about time. And it's about time for these 10 movies and more to get those 4K releases. So sorry that this video was 30 minutes. I love talking, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think are horror movies that need 4K releases. Like, of course, there's so many others, and if you guys want a part 2 sometime in the future, maybe in October, I'll do it. I will be happy to do another part 2 video, or another part to this video. But anyway, guys, hope you guys have a great week coming up. Hope you're having a great weekend, a great holiday weekend. Remember, be safe out there, guys. Much love to you all. So, as always, you guys are awesome. You guys rock. In with the positive, out with the negative. Go eat some Skittles. And I love you all, and have a wonderful week. Thank you, guys. Bye.